Hi everyone, welcome back to the INTU podcast, and welcome back officially, because obviously I have already done a little episode, but that was just me rambling on. I mentioned in that episode though, which was called Who Is She? Where Did You Find Her? That the podcast is now, not just limited to things about brain magic, spirituality, and consciousness, etc. But with those things in mind as like things I'm interested in. I'm going to look at loads of different concepts because I feel like I was limiting myself beforehand by saying I just want to talk about these things because really I want to talk about everything and I'm excited about it. So welcome back and thank you so much for tuning in to listen to me. I was basically saying in my last episode that today's episode is going to be all about things to do with nuance. I want to be a lot more expansive and free to be whoever I am and let the podcast be whatever it is, which will most likely be me, mulling over ideas passionately and thinking out loud with you, hopefully. So yeah, today's episode is about nuance and escaping the binary in all ways. And yeah, thank you to all the gender non-conforming people who have led the way for this. So let's get into it. So obviously, like many of our systems in the world today promote a binary way of thinking. Our short and snappy one-line pieces of info are so limited and oversimplify the complexities of being human. And I think we experience this in all different ways, not just how we consume media or information, but how we look at things as well. I feel like it's really overcrowding our experiences as humans at the moment with just like a black and white thinking. I also think with like advice and stuff, it's become like as if, all, let's say, self-help advice would apply to all situations, and it just doesn't work like that. Like, you are going to be the expert on yourself, and so it's the same with like when you're going to the doctor, when you're going to anywhere, like you have to be the advocate for yourself as well, because you are going to be different to every single person in some ways, and with that comes the need for anomalies and there to be difference. I feel like so much of life at the moment is like taking the averages. Imagine there's like a huge bar chart or something, not bar chart, just like a regular chart, where all of the data is all over it in all different directions, but we take an average, which could literally be no one's actual point of being is actually on that average line, but when you put it all together, that's what it becomes. And I just think we should stop making everything an average and look at more the full picture. Do you know what I mean? Like everything I think at the moment just feels like it's got to be like catchy or like shareable or quotable, and I just think we're boiling everything down to a point of being like nothingness, and it's not vibing with me. When you're using all these all or nothing statements, you really are just making like broad general claims about shoulds and always and nevers and shouldn'ts. Like, it doesn't account for the way that most of us are actually living our lives, and the different courses of actions that we might take to better our lives could be different for every person. But if you just like read on Instagram that the best thing to do is XYZ, then you just think like, okay, but if that doesn't work with my life, does that mean that there's something wrong with me? And it doesn't. I just think it's not accounting for everyone. And honestly, like, averages a lot of the time are not even taking into account everyone who exists. A lot of the things that even in medicine, like, it wasn't until the 90s that women even had to be included in clinical trials. So facts in books about this is this for these types of people doesn't account for all women in a lot of situations, doesn't account for less privileged people, doesn't account for different people of different diversities. Like, it's just ridiculous. It's basically just all white men, which is just not everyone. And I just think oversimplified situations are always going to put a pressure on you to like be a certain way, and I just think that's not right. It's not how it should be. I don't know. Like, I don't know if any of you guys saw an episode of Grey's Anatomy, and it had what's that character's name? Do you know the one who was married to Alex? Anyway, she was in it, and she was in therapy, and she was learning about like yes and, instead of thinking I feel this but also this, like, well, not even also, but like how can the two coexist, being more prepared to being like, this can be this case and this can be the case, like multiple things can be true at once. Like, for example, me and my boyfriend have just finished watching The Traitors US with Alan Cummings as the like little host, and Sari, okay, this is actually spoiler alert, but Sari, who was on Survivor like multiple seasons, had to be pretty cutthroat, and she ended up winning something, right? I don't want to give away too much information, but she ended up winning something. And yeah, but she had to lie to do it quite a lot and hurt a lot of people's feelings. And so at the end, she would have felt like super guilty, but also this like elation because she's just won loads of money. So I don't know. It's just you can have multiple things coexisting at once. Like people are so complex, and that's what this episode's going to be about. Because at the end of the day, it's so ridiculous that we're all just being pulled into these like two categories in a lot of situations. Like so many things, are like it's either this or it's this. Like no, it ain't. You know, it could be anything. Many industries really benefit from there being like a black and white thinking type of thing, because if there's a single answer, that answer can be branded, it can be marketed, it can be sold, and then it's making you rich, you know. Like a lot of the things that we do to get this like black and white thinking is just to basically make ourselves feel safe. Like if there is an answer to something, you know, if there's a single right way, or if there's something that can be done that's like that exact thing, then there's something, like there's hope in a way, if you get what I'm trying to say. But you know, it can otherwise be kind of difficult to embrace like the chaos of like being like, well, there's no objective anything, you know. I mean, there might be in some situations, but it's just funny to think like it really can just be different for everyone in all sorts of situations. And trying to find that like sort of gray area, or the colored area, which I think is more interesting than making it a gray area. You know, you get to kind of determine for you what's going to work best for you in different situations, but also for your community or for who you are dealing with. Or oh, sorry, I don't know if that made a noise. But it can just make it so your life is actually just better, and the people around you's life is better, and the world could be better if everyone realized that things aren't just like one way or the other. Do you know what I mean? Because then also you get to like advocate for people in a way that aligns with like that your values, not just like the values of like one person or like a certain like demographic, but it could be different for everyone, and we could live in a world where everyone's happy, if you know what I mean. Well, not everyone's happy, I'm sure, but do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I have a sibling who has recently come out as non-binary, and to me, their journey has been inspiring as well, because I feel like everyone should really be escaping the binary as much as possible. Like, if we can just feel free to be who we are, then we don't have to be like these robots that fit into different boxes, or anything we don't want to be. We can just be who we are, and that's the main important thing in life. Like if we could all just be exactly who we are, then we're going to thrive, we're going to flourish, and we're going to be able to make connections that are more real. And I think the world could be so much more powerful and interesting and exciting if everyone was able to be their authentic selves, unburdened by shame and societal pressure and etc. Like how you feel can be super nuanced. Like you can think, do you know what, I'm like absolutely devoed about something, but I also feel like relieved, or you know. And I feel like a lot of the time it's like, if you feel bad XYZ, by a lot of people in the toxic positivity realm. But I also think there are a lot of people who tar all positivity with the toxic positivity brush. Like but then, you know, that's the thing, like if you're literally just like, no, I don't accept any of that and I don't accept any of that, then you're so limiting your world. And I feel like not only is that happening on an individual level, but that is sort of being imposed on us as well, I think. Like governments actually use these types of binary thinking to advance their messages and their policies to promote propaganda. And it's, you know, this is how like colonialism and slavery and everything has grown, because you're dividing people into groups, labeling them enemies before even knowing them or giving them a chance to connect. And I think that happens in literally every field, or every thing that can happen is being affected by this binary way of thinking. And that's dangerous, I think, because what the hell? There's literally like 8 billion people. How can it all just be like, we'll fit that 50-50, no problem. Like, I'm reading this book at the moment. It's called Being You by Anil Seth. And I actually, in one of my previous podcasts, or maybe even just one of the episodes of this podcast, have mentioned a TED Talk by this guy who I'd actually seen this TED Talk like 5 years ago. And the TED Talk is called Your Brain Hallucinates Your Conscious Reality. And then the book is called Being You, and it says the science of consciousness. It's only come out like 2022, I think, or maybe even 2021, but not long ago. I'll have a look, one sec. Yeah, 2021 it came out. So, but yeah, and in it, it's a lot about how your perspective shapes the self, basically, and I'll leave it there because I'm going to probably delve deeper into the book at some point. But for now, I'm just going to talk about it like this. And I just think that because everyone's going to have their own perspective, which is so nuanced in itself, everything has to be nuanced because of that. Everyone's perspective is going to be completely different. People might share some views, but everyone's layered of their like layers of their life and the different experiences they've gone through, like sort of build together with the things that they've, you know, read and thought about and spoken about and, you know, connected about and experienced in emotional ways and all sorts, have their own way of looking at things, and that can be rewired and stuff. But if everyone's coming at things with a slightly different point of view, and do you know what, it makes me think as well, because like obviously our voting system in the UK is an absolute load of shit, and I think there are some countries who spend more time voting on like the specific things they want to have come in, rather than picking some people to like make those decisions for them. And I think, to me, that makes a lot more sense in a democracy, for everyone to be like making decisions about things individually. And maybe I'm wrong about that, and maybe if you asked me about it in 5 years I would disagree with that, but right now that's what I kind of think. And I think it would allow for a lot more, you know, because a lot of people don't just want to don't just agree with one thing from one party. Like I know a lot of people who say that they, you know, would vote one way if they would change their ideas about one thing, or, you know, people that don't like Labour because they think, you know, they're not good economically, which, by the way, is a total joke right now. If you actually look at the state of our country, but whatever. Yeah, I just think it would allow for so much more individual thoughts about different subjects, which would then be like, you know, if somebody just wants it to be that they want to vote for the Tories for an unknown reason that I cannot think of, but you know, I'm not going to be a dick. If they, you know, let me gather myself. I just get so thrown off by what twats the Tories are, but okay, let me focus. A lot of people only vote for the Tories for one reason, but they don't vote for them for another reason. And I just think if everything was more about like the individual concepts of like, what do we need to do about money? What do we need to do about education? What should we do about travel? What should we do about, you know, welfare? What should we do about X, Y, Z? We would probably actually come to better conclusions that are more clear anyway. So I just think if we had more nuance in it, rather than it just being like, it's these two parties, maybe this one with the extra few, but like, come on, there's like 8. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's not that many like options, and there's only 2 that ever win it because of the way that people talk about it, basically, and the way that the voting system works is so ridiculous. But yeah, go to electoral reform, by the way. There's campaigns going on about that now. I've joined one recently, but this was not me plugging that. I mean, yeah, it was actually. Electoral reform, go for it, bam. But anyway, what was I fucking going on about? Let me have a look. Oh yeah, the book by Anil Seth. So yeah, it's all about his perspective anyway, and everything is going to be nuanced. I think in psychology, black and white thinking is literally a symptom of a health issue, and it comes up in a variety of different mental health diagnoses. And, you know, I think black and white thinking is literally a health issue to our society, to our communities, to our ways of interacting with one another. And I think, you know, this, by the way, does not apply to human rights issues. It's a fact that you're a cunt if you spew abuse at people for identity related things. But other stuff, like, you know, I remember seeing this thing a few years ago. This is so random, but I remember seeing this thing a few years ago that was like, people are like, everyone's allowed different opinions. And somebody else was like, yeah, but an opinion is like, I think pistachio ice cream is a load of shit, and not this person deserves to die because of who they are. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about whether it's okay to be racist. It's obviously fucking not. So that isn't the nuances I'm talking about. But what I'm actually talking about, how a lot of what we see is a promotion of caricatures, generalities, and, you know, stereotypes instead of individuality and intersectionality. And this whole thing is just a load of shit, basically, when everything is just like, it's either this or it's this. There's no in between. Men and women are the only people that can get married. Like, what a load of shit. You know, people should only be able to do this if this. Like, oh, well, about abortion, or, you know, different things. It's like, okay, well, can she get it if she was hurt to get pregnant or whatever? I just think, like, why is it got to be that it's one thing for this? I don't know. Also in America especially, but I think all over the world, really, it'll be like, if you killed someone, it's this many years in prison, no matter what. And there's a lot of situations where I think I disagree with that. Like, if someone's escaped a sex trafficker and they are about to get killed by them and they kill them, mate, they should be free. They're like, are you joking? No way. But I don't know. It's one of those things where even now I've just said that, I'm like, do I agree with that? But yeah, I do agree with that. Like, it's everything should be like different individual cases. Do you know what I mean? And I know people might come at me and be like, yeah, but there is minimum terms for different things and blah blah blah. But like, even that seems ridiculous. There's so many things where we're like, well, that's the law because somebody set it to be that at one point without having thought about other situations that could happen, or without those other situations that could happen have even been a thing yet. Like with the internet, there's so many crimes that when the laws were set, those types of crimes didn't exist, and now the law doesn't exist for that. So it's just like, well, never mind. And it's like, nah, bro, everything should be more open-ended so that there's more room to be flexible with it, I think, because it depends on the situation. I think everyone would agree that most situations depend on the situation, how bad the punishment should be or whatever it should be. Like, I don't know. Like if somebody is like literally in poverty and they steal baby formula from Tesco, who's like a rich company, like, are they that bad? I don't think that they deserve to like have anything really bad happen to them. They just need help. Do you know what I mean? So I think a lot of what our binaries do is exclude people so that everyone else can feel like, but I'm okay because I'm inside this box. And I actually just think, no, like, why don't we all just say everything is okay and let's have a look, like, let's consider everything. And if there wasn't so much shame in our society, I think people would be more willing to be like flexible about what they are talking about and what they're thinking about. Again, this is not including human rights issues. Like, in my opinion, I just think people deserve human rights, and that's not up for debate. But other things, are so many different things that are interesting and could be really in depth and complicated, but are often just painted over as if it's like one size fits all, and it's just not. I have moved, so sorry if this sounds different, but I also just think what's acceptable is so exclusive and promotes, like, honestly, an ableist society at its core. It makes people base like their judgments and make judgments based on made up binaries and different concepts of like minimalist things, and in turn ruins our chances to connect and instead fosters like otherism. And honestly, I feel like our society is disgustingly ableist at this point. It's still so ableist. Like, we have found ways to make some strides in a lot of other different parts of society. There has been otherism, or there still is, obviously, rampant otherism in lots of other ways as well. But ableism is a huge issue, and it affects people of color and different parts of society even worse, underprivileged parts of society even worse. But I've seen things recently where it's like, no child over 5 should be doing XYZ, and maybe they think, oh, I don't need to add unless they've got autism, or unless they've got this thing, but you don't need to add that. You just need to not be saying no child XYZ, because it's so exclusionary. Like, my sister Amber, who I've spoken about on this podcast before, is disabled, and I would just see so much of our language and so much of our culture excluding those people from general mainstream conversations, and then wondering why there's such a culture of, oh, well, we don't really see them, so we don't really recognize that they need help with anything. And as a result of that, they don't really come to anything, so people think that they don't really need help with anything. And I just think it's so ridiculous when so much of our society around the whole world has different disabilities or different abilities, that we're just saying everything is the same for everyone, one size fits all. Like, for example, people might say like running is good for everyone. Well, it's not if you've got a leg problem, is it? It's not. So why are you saying it's good for everyone? Because it isn't. I think it's just saying that if you don't fit into this one way of thing, then there's something wrong with you. And actually, there's something wrong with the system. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I saw this thing the other day that was like, breastfeeding after 2 years old is absolutely unacceptable, blah, 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 blah. They were literally saying, like, some people just want their kids to get bullied, for fuck's sake. Like, I think that's ridiculous, because there's just different needs for everyone. I'm not saying that, I necessarily think, oh yeah, you should breastfeed your kid until a certain age. I'm just saying it shouldn't be one size fits all for anyone, and different people have got different needs, different lifestyles, different relationships, different things. And I think it's quite ridiculous that so many people are going onto social media every day, and especially like Twitter, but a lot of Instagram is just Twitter, a lot of Facebook is just Twitter. It's just, repeating what people have said or different little memes of tweets, if you know what I mean. And half the time they're literally just slagging off people by saying that everyone should be XYZ. If you haven't done this, there's something wrong with you, and jokes about it basically. And I just think we're making everyone feel different. You know what I mean? And not in a good way, when actually we should be making everyone feel different, but in a really accepting way. This binary or single-minded, obviously binary means two, or single-minded means one, obviously, but this low grouping, like it can only be one or two or three ways of thinking, is so exclusionary in such a capacity that we're really fucking over the world. And I think that could be one of the main issues with how we all get along with each other, is trying to put everyone into these, small amount of categories, because that's what makes it easier for us, when actually people can be so many different things. And, I even hear people be like, oh, I know girls like you, or I know guys like that guy or whatever. You might know similar is not the fucking same, and different people are going to be completely different in different aspects. So there might be some people that are just like carbon copies of one another, but really I don't think that they are. When they're pushed in a situation to feel like they need to conform, then they might appear that way. But I think under the surface, a lot of people are completely different to what they are portraying. And when you're trying to fit in so that you don't feel unsafe, because we all just want to connect with each other. We're a socialist, not socialist, we're like a social creature. I think we purposely make ourselves the same as what we think is what people want to hear or see or look like or whatever, and then we're not really being who we want to be. And I think you can see with certain people who have broken past that, and a lot of the time that's come from being so the opposite way, where they really put so much pressure on themselves that eventually they're just like, fuck this. It's either my life, literally feeling like I can survive in this world and being free to be whoever I am, or it's being locked down into this one version of myself that I think is what people want from me. And that'll just kill you. I feel like it'll just ruin your life. Like, there's such freedom in just being free to be any which way, and it doesn't have to fit into any box, it doesn't have to fit into any parameters. I do see the benefit of doing things like Myers-Briggs and looking into astrology and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, it's going to be different for every single person. And we can all look for the things that bind us together, the connections, the similarities. And I think that's what's beautiful. But I feel like the beauty of that is so close to the line of also this precarious thing of like, you either are or you're not, you're other. And that sucks. So I think we've all got to be looking for, I don't know, like more ways to be open to the many. Do you know what I mean? To the fact that everything could be variables and different factors that count into things. Like, the variables are so different, the perspectives are so different for every single situation, every single field of study, every single bit of research, everything. Like, even the studies that we do in every type of way are, as a human race or whatever, are limited by who's taken part in it. And that means that we're all saying this is how people have to be, and if you don't fit into that, you're either lying or you're faking it. Obviously that's the same thing, but you know what I'm trying to say. Or it's just wrong. Even in the face of it, they'll be like, it's just wrong. I think that applies to psychic abilities and stuff like that as well. Like, people think, okay, well, that doesn't fit into the narrative that I understand, which is based on this particular piece of information that's then been passed down in generations or put through history or put in the school books or whatever. But we're constantly seeing every year new things develop in the world that show how we've been wrong in the past. And I think we have to take into consideration every piece of information we're taking in is going to be coming from a place of different perspectives, different information, and really the sources aren't always going to be as strong as we need them to be. So to really feel like anything is 100% is ridiculous, when really everything is not 100%. Like, even just, I remember, I don't know if I've said this on this podcast before, but I remember being in school, and we had, I think it was either a substitute teacher, No, it was my regular maths teacher. What am I going on about? And they were saying that, oh, we were talking about probability, obviously, and they were saying that there's a 100% chance that the sun will rise tomorrow as an example of something that's a 100% chance of. And I was like, nuh-uh, no. Like, it might be 99.99999999999999999 million nines, if you know what I mean. But there's still a tiny piece of possibility. Like anything is possible. And that they, in the end, they were like, "Yeah, you are right, but like for the sake of it, can you not just stop?" Like I was definitely that kid in school, but that's just because I feel like critical thinking is so important, and this whole one thing or the other, or like absolute definites or centrist, I can't even speak, ideas are not inclusive enough for the billions of people that are on the planet, and not inclusive enough of all of the different experiences that everyone has had, and the different experiences of everything, because even like color isn't a fact. Do you know what I mean? Like everything is, that depends on the viewer. So if you can think of it in something as simple as color theory, then you can think of it as something as big as your whole life and the whole world around you and the universe at stake. Like everything is so much more complicated than we give it credit for. And I just want to remember that when I'm going through life. Sometimes you think, well, they did this, which means for sure that they don't like me, or that, because you don't know what people's intentions are, because everyone's coming from a different perspective. So just being aware of there being differences between different things, and that not everyone and not everything is going to fit into what categories you have initially thought are what is. And if you can be open to that, you can also explore so much more innovation and creativity than what you would have otherwise.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Wow.
What bothers me the most is that
binary thinking reduces the world's complexity into two rigid categories and forces everything to fit in these boxes. Good, bad, order, chaos, love, hate, us, them, black, white, happy, sad, moral, immoral, evil, friend, enemy, heaven, hell, fat, skinny, pure, impure, man, woman. Hierarchies and power dynamics are built by dominating a group categorized everyone else as the other or bad, basically. So everyone's forced into the boxes with labels defined by stereotypes relative to the dominant group. And then we default to making assumptions about others without using evidence presented before us to make an informed conclusion. And the truth is, like, the universe is complex and non-binary. It's good versus evil binaries are created to basically build these hierarchies and power dynamics, and enforcing binaries maintains the status quo, which we obviously don't want to fucking do. So let's open our eyes. You know what I'm trying to say though? Like, maybe I sound like a dick, but I'm just trying to be honest. Like, when I'm thinking about these things, I'm like, yo, we need to actually rebel against this as much as possible. And I know a lot of people already are, so I'm not trying to come out here and be like, it was me. I'm just trying to say, look at them. Like, let's do it. Let's do it in all areas though, not just in gender, although that is obviously important, and not just in different areas that are like the mainstream. It's about everything. If you can just stop looking at things in black and white and take a step back and think, am I looking at this in black and white? Could this be more of a spectrum than I'm expecting? Everything is so much more of a spectrum. It's like you're gay or you're straight or you're da-da-da-da. Like, nah. Capitalism relies on us associating our worth to our ability to have power over others, and success is defined by the failure of others. But so, like, our survival is based on a fabricated scarcity mindset of there not being enough resources for everyone to thrive, and our success is framed as a zero-sum game. But we tolerate our own oppression as long as we're on a rung above somebody else on the social ladder. Like, binary thinking is integrated into our education to socialize us since day one. It's all we know. Schools are like breeding grounds for in-out group socialization, polar binaries, us versus them propaganda, embedded into our education, like nationalism, fear of authority, pro-police, prison beliefs, punitive justice, etc. Like, binary thinking impedes learning of new information that doesn't fit into our preconceived notions. In a binary, one pole is lauded while the other is degraded, and it impairs our ability to grow authentically since everyone is forced to assimilate to fit in and belong. And it, like I said before, it erases critical thinking. Having binaries, like, absolute beliefs about something is correct or, like, incorrect type of thing, make the assumption that we know everything with certainty. Do you ever question the probability of being wrong? Like, categorizing things as all good or all bad breeds moral superiority complexes, and the superiority of a group depends on the oppression of the other. It's okay to kind of get things wrong, but like you've got to be able to look at how there could be lots of different options, and we identify by different labels, and we don't want to just choose our labels but exist without the need to reduce people to labels. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of concepts that we take on as fact anyway right now aren't even based in reality, they're made up. So if we're basing everything on those made up things, our whole foundations are broken. Binaries are making us make assumptions without any facts based on generalizations, which is literally how most isms are caused. Do you know what I mean? And most, I hate to call them phobias, but like hatred spewing people, like transphobic people or homophobic people, whatever. Hashtag dickheads. No. It's all based on thinking that people should either be one thing or another, but not anything in between. And it's not even based in science. Like, it's just not. I do think we cling to binaries because they give us this illusion of certainty where we can kind of predict the future in a way that's safe to us. Like, but we do end up hurting ourselves and others when we don't just embrace uncertainty and the unknown and realize that a lot of what we know about our life and our complex universe is actually ignorant. And if we can embrace nuance and complexity after being socialized in binaries, it might be terrifying, but it's going to be at least rooted in reality. Like I said before, binaries are actually just not even rooted in science. Like, look into it, look at it from all different perspectives. There's barely anything that is just two things, Binaries are actually the foundation of all these oppressive systems, and to find justice in them, we're going to be dismantling all these binaries because they really are the cultural fabric of capitalism. They're rigid restrictions that chain us down. There's actually just no binary belief or concept in existence that's accurate or supported by any reality. A fluid existence is anti-fragile and adaptive to a universe in constant flux. Like, we are in flux. Core block party, it's happening. Our evolution depends on our collective shift to a non-binary existence in general, but also just to be open and fluid and evolving and changing all the time. And if we're putting these rigid like cages on ourselves, then how are we going to move through? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Please, no, sorry.
I was reading this great article earlier, and I will put it in the link in bio thing that I've got. But basically, they were talking about coining a phrase for nuanced intersectionalism, and it's basically a framework for understanding how a variety of beliefs and identities can exist and intersect simultaneously. They were also talking about reconciling paradoxes, like it involves, questioning conventions and considering unorthodox perspectives to us. Some of the foundational concepts in life contradict each other. So, for example, you need to fail to succeed, or the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything. And I think, looking at things from other people's perspectives and recognizing that we each have our own perspectives on everything is how empathy and, perspective taking of humanization begins. Like, it's the actual core of how we can connect with each other and to actually live in a community that we feel excited about and proud of and, inspired by. Like, we're all thriving rather than this heap of shit that's going on now. And when you find yourself separating yourself from stereotypes and stereotypes from your reality, if you can make a habit of that, then you're also going to start to see people as full humans instead of exaggerations. And I think even with reality TV and all types of TV, if you look at Friends, that they've purposely made each of the different people a different sort of stereotype of who would be in a group of friends. And it happens with all sorts of things now. And I'm the this one, or I'm the funny one, or I'm the pretty one, or I'm the, do you know what I mean? Breakfast Club style. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And I think if we're kind of putting everyone into these boxes all the time, and I know people have been literally saying this for decades. I'm not the first person to say, guys, this is a bad idea, but I just think it's not gone anywhere. It's actually just getting worse, and I just want to talk about what the fuck we're thinking. Yeah, and also just I don't know, I want somebody who's like this. I think it happens a lot with relationships where you see people talking about who's your type. How do you know? You don't know until you know. Everyone's different, and I think it's crazy to be I only like blonde people. What? Because it's so small. It's such a small this is the only thing I accept. Rather than everything could happen. I think you close yourself off to opportunities of beautiful experiences or greatness or joy or whatever by just being like, I only do this. I started reading this other article as well, and it was talking about well, I didn't actually agree with the article in the end. I was actually looking at it because I thought it was going to be about the gender binary, and I was going to, use it as a bit of a reference to talk about a few other things as well. But it ended up being not about the gender binary in terms of like men, women, non-binary people, and everything around and in between that. It was more talking about the gender gap between men and women. So it was a bit exclusive, basically. But it was essentially, it made one good point, which was basically saying that it's about how walled communities where individuals' biases are reinforced through continual feedback loops, like echo chambers, is how a lot of things end up happening. Like trying to fit everything into boxes, then those boxes become like squared off, I don't know if I'm making any sense, but he's basically was making some good points in that article, but he was basically talking about how this isn't the bit that I think was a good point, by the way, I just want to be clear, but he was saying, which I didn't agree with, that, for example, saying that the gender pay gap is all because of like men and women issues to do with sexism in society and the structural parts of our world. But he was saying, but it also comes down to, a lot of women are more agreeable, so then they're more likely to have not asked for bigger pay rises anyway, and da-da-da-da-da. And I was thinking, I get what he's trying to say if it wasn't on that particular topic. Like, I get that there could be other reasons for problems. And what he was saying wasn't that means that, fuck the gender pay gap, it's your fault. He was saying, so that means that to find a better solution to the issue, it isn't just going to work to be like, pay all women the same as men, like, which I think is a load of rubbish, because just pay women the same as men. But he was saying that he was chatting shit, basically. But I think he was basically saying that there would be better solutions to things. We could find better outcomes to things if we looked at the processes as being for other reasons, like we could find better solutions, which in the situation that he was talking about with the gender pay gap, I didn't agree with what he was saying at all, but I kind of got the wider idea. So maybe he just used a bad example, but because what his example, the reason I think it's a bad example, maybe I should make this clear, is that it doesn't take into account the power dynamic, which is what a lot of people who try and talk about these types of things, who are men, by the way, this is, they get things wrong, but they kind of missed out the aspect of the power. And if someone's arguing or debating and voicing dangerous ideas and has more power or influence, whether they're right or wrong, things will likely go their way. So there are some discussions that need like more nuance, and some that need both support and open-ended thought from a safe place. But rather than like having a quite dangerous perspective of blaming the gender pay gap on women being more agreeable, when that was women being more agreeable is most likely as a result of a society that put large and often violent pressures on women to be agreeable. So you need to go back further to see things from that like point of view, if you know what I mean. But nuance helps with this anyway, because I guess if he's saying, well, not all women are agreeable anyway, if he was saying that all women are agreeable equals pay gap, he's suggesting, is that a reason? And when the answer is no, you can continue exploring other possible solutions. So I do get like looking at different reasons it could be as well. But let's be honest, like it's because of the patriarchy. And I also just think like, on another note, everything becoming so quip and quickie and, sharp and like easy to consume has made it so that a lot of like good ideas or good concepts are kind of painted as being a load of rubbish because people aren't delving deep enough into it to actually do the research themselves. They just see like the simple one-liners and they think that's a load of rubbish. I don't agree with that particular thing, so I'm not going to look at it at all. And I think that happens a lot with horoscopes as well, because they became one-liners like in the last like 50 years in the newspaper. Like they got in the newspaper and they were like, okay, yeah, you can put this much space in. But astrology is highly complicated, and it cannot be boiled down to what's one thing about your sun sign that's going on today. It's just not it's not to be consumed in that way. And the fact is, somebody just thought, oh, this will make money. People are getting interested in this kind of stuff. And it's taken away the beauty of it, because, you know, when you take away the nuance, like, it's like, if you're one of these 12 things today, like one of the different zodiac signs, then you'll have this kind of day. Like, obviously fucking not. And it's no wonder so many people think horoscopes are bullshit, because without the rest of the picture, like without the rest of your chart, without taking into account the houses and the planets and all the different things that are relevant, it is just nothingness, because there's so much to your birth chart. And it's multifaceted, and it's built on like thousands of years of people looking into this and researching it. And it's gone from being this like ancient tradition that's like, you know, helped people for like millennia, to now this ridiculous like thing that's like painted as just like, that's woo woo and fuck that. Like, no, like, get a grip. Try and look at things at multiple ways at once. Like, that can be a load of rubbish, but doesn't mean the whole thing is a load of rubbish. I just think like everything has got to be and rather than just but. Like, it doesn't have to always be and, but you got to consider that as an option, you know. Multiple things can coexist. And I just think, you know, it's like what I was saying earlier, like everything has got so many anomalies. And I think that's what a lot of the episodes I've already done so far of this podcast have been about, is about like unusual things where people are like, no, that's not possible because it hasn't happened to them. But there's so many people and there's so many different experiences that people have. And if a lot of people say this has happened to me, then you got to take it into account. And I just think like, even if one person says things that are a bit unusual, like, doesn't mean it's not possible just because it hasn't happened to a lot of people. Like, there are different situations and everything. And it's like, oh, well, people can't do, I don't know, remote viewing because some people can't do remote viewing. People are like, no, that's a load of rubbish. But there are different people who can do loads of different things. Like, it's just mad to me. Like, everyone is different and everyone's got so many different experiences and I think powers and different capabilities and different, you know, skills and all sorts of things. And you're not going to know about those things if you just say, no, it's one size fits all. Like, you're either like, you know, a lot of the things that exist in our society today, they've given us a little scale within them. You know, you could be like good at sport, bad at sport, or like quite good at sport, or like insane at sport, right? But they haven't like opened it up to be like as many different types of creation as possible. And I just think humans are meant to be so much more creative than we're being allowed to be now, because everything is so like into this thing. This is how we're making the society work, and everyone's like, yeah, it's just working. I mean, I'm not saying that everyone thinks that, because obviously a lot of people like society is collapsing, but like it's a load of shit. It's all built on fake foundations. So because it's like, oh, everyone's got to be either this or this or this. Like, you can only be one of these things and you can only do this thing. And, you know, your days basically look the same because you just get up and you do this and you go there and you do this. You see these people and you go there and you go home. Like, no, like your life and everything in the world can be so much more interesting, I think, if you allow it to, again, escape the binary. Like, you know, release control of things being so rigid and think, wow, like, this could be flexible. And I think that's like something that psychedelics definitely do, you know, open people up to, like, because if you can kind of see the things in the world as all one rather than like we see objects as all being kind of separate, but when you're on psychedelics you do see things as kind of like being like as part of one thing, like you see the atoms of things together rather than separate. And I think that can be useful, but it would be useful if everyone was just like, let's try this, rather than there being like war on drugs and we just get rid of these things. And then now they're only just starting to get the research done again, but it's becoming clear that it could be a good way for our society to heal and mold by looking at things from different perspectives than how we have previously. And not saying you need drugs to do that, but just saying that it could be a good way for a lot of people to change the way that they're thinking about things. I mean, obviously, if you look back to the 60s and stuff, like, there were so many changes in society based on how so many people had tried this thing that actually changes how you look at things, or opens you up to how you could look at things more. And I think you can do that sober too. I just think you've got to want to and be open to it. And I guess all of this is about openness, isn't it? It's about expanding what is possible in our eyes, or like what is like what is allowed in a way, like what we have permission to be, what we can do. And I think, you know, I don't know, I just think like we could be so much more creative as people. Everyone wants to look the same, everyone wants to sound the same, everyone wants to fit in a certain way. And really, like, how much more interesting would the world be if everyone was just like not confined to any like binaries? Just in general, like, fucking fuck binaries, man.
Yeah, bitch!
I don't know what the fuck she's saying, but girl, I am living.
I was thinking was that like, my boyfriend Dan is also a producer, and something that has been difficult is that he's like exploring music in a different way to like what is necessarily like the common thing. Like, I think melodic techno is basically the main thing in the dance scene right now, but you know, he's not as much of a fan of that. And I don't know, like, a lot of genres are like, we accept this type of music or this type of music, but they're not as open to other types of music. And I just think like all of the things that we're consuming are being limited by like, what do people think will make money, which is often not even correct. You know, like, a lot of the most big superstars in our history have been people who you wouldn't have expected at the time. And that's what's made them so great. But now it's like, well, if we don't see you matching someone, like, they basically, like, songs you hear on the radio at the moment are all sampled to the nines. Like, it's literally like a song that sounds like another song that sounds like another song that sounds like another song. And I just think we're ruining art a little bit by making it all like have to be the same to be allowed to be able to be enjoyed by people. It has to be able to make money, which people only want to take a bet on something making money if they can see something else that's made money that's similar. So they basically like, okay, just copy that, and if it sounds the same as that, then people will like it. I mean, there's literally like I can't remember what it's called, but it's like something to do with a triangle that's like Ed Sheeran and a lot of famous songwriters and singers use this thing. It's like a way of sounding. Oh, Dan will tell me later on, but it's like the carbon copy of like what will sound good and what will people like. But I feel like if we explore sound more creatively, more freely, rather than being like, this is what is good, like, why are we saying this is the only things that we like the sound of? Like, that's crazy to me. And things like it really like stunts innovation, I think. Like, I think so much of like what is amazing and creative and beautiful comes from like things being outside of any sort of box. And the more and more pressure there is to stay inside a box, to stay uniform, to stay like one size fits all, the more we're just losing out on what's real. Like, I feel like everything's becoming like weird. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Maybe I'm losing my mind, but hits blunt, lol. Sorry, I just wobbled the table as well. Probably made loads of noise. I just think like nuance is what makes our world and our lives more connected, because the complexities of things are what allows for multiple connections. Like, if you think about the neurons in your brain like firing across all these different like little bridges, you know, I feel like that is what we experience as humans every day. And the more we're cutting away the nuance, the more we're like just building like high speed powered trains from one side to the other, rather than exploring like the country route. Do you know what I mean? In life though, like, and that, you know, that's because of everything trying to be about money. So it's like you got to have less time in the day to be able to make money for companies where you're not even taking the money. Like, my politics is coming out now. I'm doing too much politics talking, but do you know what? I don't know if I agree with you can even do too much politics talking. I just think what a privilege to be able to be like, I don't want to talk about politics. Like, life is about politics, and it's you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to ignore that. But I mean, you can if you want. But anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. I just think nothing should be one size fits all, especially life. And, you know, except for human rights. Obviously, I've said this like 10 times, but nuance applies in lots of different situations to do with living. Like, if you've been a victim of abuse, your discovery of the self and journey with that would be really different to those with like a healthy enough childhood. So like, trying to find who you are as a person might seem all self-consuming when all you've had in your life is just ease when you were a child and like a total good life and everything being perfect. But if you get to your 30s or 40s and then you realize, oh, actually, I've had this like terrible abusive life, then you're going to like have to rediscover yourself like you're a child. So then if somebody's like, don't act like a child when you're an adult, as like a one size fits all, like adults shouldn't act like children, or adults shouldn't be interested in these things, or adults shouldn't do this, then it doesn't fit you, and it's not fair to then make yourself feel shame about something that doesn't fit you. Or like, you know, it's like health at every size as well, Hayes. Like, you know, just because somebody looks a certain way doesn't mean that their health is a certain way. Like, everything is so much more complicated. It doesn't mean like if you're overweight that you're lazy or something like that. It's so ridiculous, because do you know how many skinny people I know that are lazy, but how many people that would be considered overweight, quotation marks, are really in good shape, like physically able to do so much more exercise, had so much more nutrients in their bodies. Like, people are not just one thing, and we've got to stop thinking about that. And I want to invite everyone as well, and I'm going to try and do it as well. So just like, if you're like going through a situation right now, or you're looking at different things in your life, try and like look for the nuance. Like, what could be more complicated than what you're currently giving it credit for? You know, what are you looking at with black and white thinking kind of like mind frame, when you could be actually missing something really exciting or beautiful or actually important, or, you know, kind of as well. Like, I think a lot of the time when we put things in a binary, we're losing our ability to be intuitive about things, because feeling is where things really come from. And I think intuition is obviously related to feeling, and I just think we're missing out on all these different opportunities to live in a more exciting and fulfilling and connected life by making everything be like, only this is pretty, or only this is good, or only this is interesting, or only this is cool. Like, it's actually often the thing that's different that ends up being the coolest, but everyone gets told you'll only be cool if you fit in this box, but then actually in the end that's not true. Do you know what I mean? Or like, you'll only be popular if you're like this, but actually in the end those kind of people end up being kind of boring. Or do you know what I mean? Like, things are so much more complicated than we give them credit for at the moment, I think. But again, this is just my opinion, and you don't have to agree with it, so it's okay. But I think probably everyone does agree with it. Maybe this is just one of those things where I'm like speaking for like 45 minutes about something that everyone already agrees with. But I just think if you agree with it, let's try and make it, you know, important in our own lives. And I think when we give ourselves permission to open up to allow for different things, we also do that for everyone around us, because everyone sees, oh, actually, it's not all one size fits all, and I don't want to be one size fits all. My friend is different to everyone else, and I want to be different to everyone else, including them. And I just want to all be individuals, and individuals got to make up a community. So I'm not trying to say be only about yourself and fuck the rest of the world. I'm trying to say, let's explore ourselves so that we can all explore the world together in a more open way and without fear of violence, basically, which is what so many people in the world have got to be worried about, because of the binaries that the world is promoting. Like the world celebrates these horrible boxy things, which we don't want. And yeah, we want to promote the opposite. Let's promote being different. Let's promote non-binary. Let's promote like just exploring what different things can be in different ways, and not just being like, absolutely no, that cannot be the case about one thing, or just being like, what a load of rubbish about something that you haven't even experienced or read about or like researched or anything. Like, things can be multiple things at once, basically.
What are you talking about? I'm saying people are complex.
Because I also think like associations and connections, which come as a result of nuance, are what makes you a good reader and writer. You know, intertextual references or jokes within jokes within jokes, like how whole comedy sets are basically formed. And the moment of recognizing that connection is so powerful, like, oh, I knew that kind of thing. Like, this is the stuff. This is the stuff of life. This is the stuff that we can be so excited about. And this is the stuff I want to get into. You know, I want to explore all of the things, and I want to explore them from all the perspectives. And I think to do that, you've got to be willing to accept nuance and escape the binary and look at things from all different perspectives. And yeah, I'm going to try and do that. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Hope you are, you know, pondering stuff, pondering all the things now, pondering it like, woo. I've got that situation where I'm just like saying the same thing over and over and over again, but welcome back to Into It. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Sorry if it was like super rambly and you were just like, what are you going on about? But I just had all these thoughts about nuance and all these thoughts about how it applies and how it shouldn't apply, and how, you know, if you see things a lot of the time from a certain account or something on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, where it's always like things you should never do if X, Y, Z, then I have a comment on it and kind of suggest that they be a bit more, you know, complex with it, because I also think where we spend our attention is where companies will change things. And right now we do live in a capitalist society, and I just think if we're going to change anything, it's got to be through wanting more. And I think right now companies have made it so that it's like, oh, for a bit people were interested in things being short and quick, so now we're going to capitalize on that and make that everything, when actually so many things should be longer and more complex and more with more like little subsections and more things, like if this is the case, maybe it's this, or maybe it's this, but also this does not apply to everyone, and including but not limited to, and all of those types of things. So yeah, embrace nuance and binary escaping lifestyles in your own lives, hopefully, and encourage others around you to do the same. That's my ideas. And yeah, love you all. Thanks for coming to listen to Into It, and see you next time. Bye.
That's all, folks.
Bye.